All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. I want to take this time out to let everybody know that this is a very special edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Got one tag team partner who is already in place, and we have the makings of what should be us getting ready for a six-man tag tonight, if you will. But nonetheless, if anybody follows this channel on YouTube, you are no stranger to seeing Mark Jenkins on these platforms with me. And Mark, once again, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great, Will. How are you, bro?
Man, listen, I have zero complaints. You and I have talked about this topic, and the bottom line is if Michael Buffer were around right now, he'd say, let's get ready to rumble. But nonetheless, what we're going to talk about on this edition of this podcast is the current hard knock life for NBA head coaches. And I bring this up because why would anybody want to be an NBA head coach right now? There appears to be not a lot of job security. And typically, you would think that winning and winning championships would result in job security, but that is no longer the case in the National Basketball Association. Why? Because since 2019, we've had six different teams with six different head coaches win the NBA championship. And as of right now, only two of those head coaches are still employed by those teams that they won championships with. Of course, Joe Mazzulla was the incumbent champion along with the rest of the Boston Celtics. They won last year. And then Steve Kerr with the Golden State Warriors. Nick Nurse led the Toronto Raptors to the championship back in 2019. He got let go a couple of years later. He's currently with the Philadelphia 76ers. We saw Mike Budenholzer lead the Milwaukee Bucks to the NBA championship back in 2021. He was let go a couple of years ago, and he just got his walking papers on Monday from the Phoenix Suns. Frank Vogel led the Lakers to the championship back in 2020. It was a couple of years after that that Vogel was let go. And of course, most recently, Michael Malone with the Denver Nuggets after helping that franchise win its first NBA championship a little bit less than 2 years ago. So, like I said before, and I will pose the question to you, Mark, why would anybody want to be a head coach in the NBA right now?
Well, the quick answer to that is I don't think anybody should. The money in college is almost as good and the job security is a little bit more stable. But to answer this in a long way, it's crazy because what used to be what the pinnacle of coaching was in basketball, there have been plenty of coaches that have been legends in the high school circuit and college circuit and maybe never aspired to get to that next level. But for most coaches, the pinnacle of what they thought their successful career would be some type of stay in the NBA, possibly, coaching a championship contending team or a championship winning team. And now that doesn't seem like that's good enough for anybody because, as you just mentioned, four of those past six championship coaches have been let go with the merry-go-round that is the Phoenix Suns in particular. It's just one season and it's one and done right now. We can use that term for a total different thing because that's what it seems like those guys are doing out there with Matt Ishbia and crew. But man, this is a topic that we can go so many levels into. And it's just sad to see. Like it used to be, if you won a title, you would have I don't know, 3 to 5 year grace period after that to where even if the wheels completely fell off the wagon, you would still be able to, like, I don't know, maintain your job. Now you win a chip, year later, things don't go as they should go, and now you're on the hot seat all of a sudden. It's like, wow, like, all right, your team's still making the playoffs. It's not like the wagons, the wheels have completely fallen off the wagon in most of these cases that we're talking about here. So it's volatile to say the least at the state of what it is to have job security in the league right now. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of coaches are taking notice because it doesn't matter if you're a veteran coach, it doesn't matter if you're a newer coach, it doesn't matter if you've had a couple of years with the team, doesn't matter if you've had a decade with the team, like Malone's case. It like nothing matters. There's no variable that's gonna sway the pendulum in your direction one way to make it, stable for you. So I'm really curious to see how this domino is going to create a domino effect, so to speak, with coaches in the future. Hot coaches in college, do they want to, the hot young prospects, how they used to always want to come to the NBA? Are they going to want to stay in college now? Are guys in the NBA right now going to say, hey, maybe I'll take 2 mil less a season to go play, go coach somewhere in college and not have to worry about that? So this may open up a whole new Pandora's box, and I'm really curious to see what other coaches get fired, because they're going to be your typical list of, underachieving teams that are going to have their coaches fired. But what I mean by coaches fired is, I mean some of these teams that have made the playoffs and have made strides to possibly winning a championship, which of those coaches are going to get fired next? And I think that right there is going to really be a telling factor.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it first and foremost. I mean, guys, like Rick Adelman and Jerry Sloan and Lenny Wilkens would not have lasted, in this current era because you figure Jerry Sloan basically had more than 20 years in Utah before he quit because he couldn't deal with Darren Williams. And it was one of those where like you knew with Jerry Sloan, he would get the Jazz to the playoffs. It might not always, be a deep run, but he would get you there. Same thing with Rudy Tomjanovich before they finally won some championships in Houston and Rick Adelman all those years in Portland, and then of course in Sacramento it was kind of like the same thing, and it was basically the same thing with Lenny Wilkens. For me, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles. First things first, we no longer have basketball people running these organizations. It's more corporate than ever, and you get people coming in with a corporate aspect or a corporate mindset. And I understand the sports of business. Okay, do not get me wrong, but you know, building a championship in sports takes time. And I've talked about this with Matt Ishbia, for an example, with the Phoenix Suns. It's not as simple as you just simply add water and stir. It doesn't work like that. And, in the corporate world, you could be like, okay, you know what? We had a bad fiscal year. We had a bad fiscal year and a half. Let's move on from so and so in this department. You can't simply do that with sports because you have to find a head coach, and then he has to develop a chemistry. He has to develop a rapport with his players. And in the case of the Phoenix Suns, you're not gonna you're not gonna have that chemistry over 1 year. Sometimes it takes time because usually coaches after a year they sit back and they evaluate everything and they say, hey, you know what? Okay, this isn't working. I need to bring in these guys to work with my star players or these type of players, things like that. Because anytime, typically, when you go from one coach to another, there's always a transition period. Okay, that's the bottom line. You know what I'm saying? As far as like, okay, Phoenix, for an example, last year they had Frank Vogel. Now you've got Mike Budenholzer. Maybe they have two different styles of coaching, and it's one of those scenarios where it's just like, hey, it might, the players that were there might not be able to fit into that mix. D, what is going on tonight, my man?
What's up, brother?
We're here and we're just talking about this head coaching carousel in the NBA. And I will pose the same question to you that I just posed to Mark. With so many head coaches being let go in recent years, more importantly, so many head coaches that have won NBA championships, why would anybody want to be a head coach currently in the NBA?
It's a really good question right now, William. And I would, preface it by saying, first and foremost, man, Mark, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, bro? How you doing?
Man, I'm just here, man. I'm just here. Apologize for being a little late. My phone died and had to get a charger. But no excuses. Be on time, right? Um,
Don't don't
no,
don't 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 let Tom Coughlin hear that from you, man.
yeah, listen, you know me. You know me. But as someone that has stood on a lot of sidelines and coached a lot of places in more than one sport, I'm very partial to coaches. You know, before you got fired for losing, like you getting guys getting fired over 500. You getting guys fired. Griffin got fired. They lost like 3 games. They had like 3 losses and like 15 wins. I don't know the exact record, but like when the Bucks fired Griffin, like in the beginning of the year,
They
you
would
look at these things like, yo, what
they
do
had,
you have to do as a coach? Like, it almost makes me like say to myself, like, damn, that was something I always wanted to do, always aspired to be, like, a coach and go far. Like, it's such a turnoff. Because then who's the hell accountable? The players are not being held accountable, and the coaches can't hold the players accountable. So then who's holding them accountable? The owners cater to the players. Now, let's just be honest. The NBA is the players' league. It's the only players' league. Okay. It's funny. You go back and you look at the history of things. They were the first people to have free agency. They were the first ones to have guaranteed contracts. Maybe Major League Baseball could be wrong about that, but like um, a lot of unions, players unions, and other sports are following the NBA's lead. They've led the way, But to see it going down like this is really scary, man.
no, listen, it is, man, and it's just one of those where, you know, you brought up something that I was going to ask both of y'all anyway. We are in the player empowerment era in the NBA. And has the player empowerment era gotten out of control? And is it something where, this has a lot to do with these coaches being let go?
Yeah, it's a big part of the problem. And I mean, I don't think anything can be done about it unless something is done about it at an earlier stage. This isn't something that they just learn when they get that $1 million, contract. Now they're learning it even sooner when they get $1 million NIL deals. You're talking about AAU deals, money from stuff like that. So it's the sense of entitlement that comes from a very early age. And, it's not only the superstar players that are receiving this type of treatment. It's the marginally good players that's getting this type of treatment. And it leads to a sense of entitlement that is just going to elephant unless something is done about it at an early age. And the sad thing about it is, with the more that the game has developed over the past, let's say, I don't know, 10, 15 years, the more power AAU has gotten. And with the more power that AAU has gotten, they're basically exercising it, and it's only increasing on every level. The stars get more and more power. And I mean, I'm all for the college players making their money finally with NIL, but it also opens up a whole nother bag. And we had conversations about this before. Is it's great on one end, but also, damn, it opens up a whole nother Pandora's box.
Yeah, and before, I jump to that, I just want to let, each one of you know that, I thank you for joining me on this on this podcast, just for the simple fact that I know that I promised both of y'all X amount of money in NILs, and I know that y'all wanted more, but you still were nice enough to come on here with me. But yeah, nonetheless, it's out of control because I mean, you're looking at it is typically, coaches have to be teachers. And sometimes when you are a teacher, it's better to tell somebody what they need to hear as opposed to what they want to hear. Okay. All of us have been on teams, okay, at different levels in our lives. And of course, Dennis, you have and you still coach. And you probably have it tougher than all of us. And I know, I ain't trying to sound like the old head, get off my lawn, this, that, and the third. But we've all had coaches, chew us out for stuff that they felt like, we weren't doing right. And at the end of the day, we accepted it, we learned from it, and we moved on. Listen, there was a guy that all of us know, and when I wrestled for him, he told me straight up and down, he was like, "Big fella, listen, you can't wrestle for me until you get down to 275." And I had to work my tail off to do it. You know what I'm saying? There was no ifs, ands, or buts. There was no negotiating. It was nothing like, well, you know what? I don't like what he's saying. I'm going to go to another school. And again, getting back to the kids, to your point, from the AAU level, and it goes to the college level, and it goes to the NBA level as well. These guys, they don't know how to fail, because the thing is, it's like, it starts, like, you see it at the college level, you see it at the AAU level, where it's like, okay, if I'm not getting run, or if I'm not getting my shots, I'm gonna just bounce and go to a team that's going to let me be me. And if a coach tries to put you in a semblance of an offense that you don't like, well, guess what? You know what? I'm going to go play someplace else. And then, to your point, Mark, they get to the NBA level, and now it's like, you know what? I don't like what this coach is doing. You know what? You go to complain to the GM, you go complain to the front office, or the owner, or something like that. Next thing you know, the coach is getting up out of there. Prime example of this, okay, we're going to go back more than 10 years when Darren Williams played for the Brooklyn Nets. And of course, Brooklyn got him from the Utah Jazz. Okay, when D Will came to the Nets, they were still in Jersey at the time. So at this point, he played for Avery Johnson, who was the head coach of the Nets, for a year and a half. Then he got his new deal, his big extension that he was pulling for. Got the extension. Within a month of getting the extension, all of a sudden he complains publicly, "I don't like the offense that we're running." And a couple of weeks later, Avery Johnson was fired. My point is this: if you're Darren Williams, that was the same offense that you played in for your first year and a half with the Nets when Avery Johnson was the coach. You didn't say a word. Now the ink doesn't even dry on your contract, and all of a sudden, "I don't like the offense that we're running. Let's get him up out of here." But again, it's a respect factor. I mean, you go back to when Kyrie and KD came to Brooklyn, and Steve Nash was a head coach. One of the first comments that Kyrie made was like, "We don't need a head coach." You know what I'm saying? Listen, these guys have simply, diminish the head coaching position. And like, whether it's superstars, whether it's stars, or whether it's, role players, they don't respect those guys. As great as LeBron is, how many head coaches has LeBron had that he has respected? How many head coaches has he had that he has either gotten fired or tried to get fired? It's just out of control, man.
You brought up high school, and I think it should be made known to the people that are end up watching this that we all went to school together, all went to the same high school, so we all had similar experiences. And of course, we are '90s babies in terms of high school, so it still was a little bit old school. Of
Yeah,
course,
definitely.
y'all know I played for Todd. You know, he was a cop. He was an active detective at the time. So there was a certain amount of moxie involved with how he handled us. And he did things that I probably shouldn't even talk about. you know, this is a story, man. He did well, yeah, and I'm just not gonna bring it up. But you know, I appreciated that old schoolness. And let's not forget, when I got there, Ted Gustis was there also, an OG coach, super old school. You know, they would do things like take the whole ball rack, throw it on the floor, and tell us if you don't come back with a basketball, you're not going to get in the game. And we'd be diving on each other, trying to get one of the basketballs from the ball rack. You know what I mean? Like one year, he took all of the football players, lined them up at the half court line, said, okay, y'all gonna do charge drills. He had Ramsby rolling, Michelle Jean Baptiste running from the freaking what's it, my man Kenneth West. These dudes just running from the half court line. We gotta stand at the box, cover our balls, and take a charge.
Yeah, listen,
Wow.
you're not gonna do that in this.
Right.
Ramsby rolling hit me with an elbow, moved my whole braces. I had to go in the bathroom, fix my teeth back, rinse out the blood, and go back on the court. I mean, listen, I'm not saying everything that was done was right. Like these were these these were the tactics that we came up on. But I appreciated being able to be coached. And Mark brought up AAU. I think the best thing that happened to me is that I never played AAU. I came straight to high school and I learned everything there. And it was actually much better for me because I don't see y'all wasn't playing basketball, but y'all do remember when all the Nike One guys came. Do y'all remember when that happened? When
Yeah,
James Clark and all those dudes came?
yeah.
The amount of entitlement, Jerome and all those guys, when they came and walked in like they owned the gym. Like they were telling me shit like, yo, I'm ranked, man. You ain't nothing, dog. I'm ranked. And I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't even know what ranked meant, William. I didn't know. Ranked where? What? And what? Who ranked you?
Right.
You're a freshman. Like, it was, I mean, I think back on it now, but Mark made me think about it because I'm still in the youth ranks. I'm still coaching some youth football. I still train basketball players. Fun fact, y'all. I don't know. Have y'all seen Andrew's team now? Have y'all checked in on them?
No, not lately.
They got a point guard there, a kid named AJ Moody. I ended up training him when he was 10 years old. He's a starting point guard now. He's
That's
pretty
what's up.
good. Yeah, y'all get on YouTube. If you put Nazareth basketball in, it'll pop up. The kid's pretty good. And I know what happened to know G Irvin too. He's the coach there. Shout out to G Irvin if he ends up seeing this somehow. But we were like old rivals on the pro circuit when I was still coaching on the pro circuit, and he would come back to Brooklyn and play against my guys, and we used to have some battles, man. So he's doing an excellent job at Nazareth, making us pretty much a relevant basketball program. But I said all that to say the AAU program, the youth circuits, period, are really spoiling the kids in football and basketball. I can speak to it on both sides. It's really bad because the parents come with the egos, right? So now you're dealing with a dad ego and a mom ego, and then the ego spills over to the kid. You might get an egoless kid that'll develop certain habits and certain ways of operating because of the parents. And it's something that I don't even know how to even like make it sound any different besides I hate it, man. It's like makes me not really, want to coach that much, you know. So,
Li-
it's a tough it's a tough deal, man.
Listen, I mean, it's tougher than ever. I mean, you're looking at it from the collegiate aspect, from the NILs especially. How many head coaches, how many quality head coaches have we seen, leave, prematurely, in recent years? I think the most telling one was, Jay Wright leaving Villanova. And, people threw Dan Hurley's name around last year. And, like it's a rumor, it sounds like it's a fake rumor as far as like there may be in like interest from the Denver Nuggets and him. But, getting back to the Lakers last year, and like people were astonished, or some people were astonished at least, that Dan Hurley could say no to the Lakers. Can you imagine if, Dan Hurley had pushed everything aside that he has established in Connecticut, and he's probably looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute, I could be the boss here in Connecticut. I could basically run the state. If Dan Hurley wanted to right now, he could run for governor and probably win by like 10% easily. Okay. But nonetheless, it's one of those where why would you leave something like that for where you have limited job security? Because again, you brought up Adrian Griffin. When Adrian Griffin got fired as the head coach of the Bucks, he was actually set up to be the All-Star coach that year for the Eastern Conference when he got let go, and then they put Doc into that spot, and people were like, "What's going on?" And then you look at the Lakers. We talked about LeBron and how many head coaches that he's gone through. When David Black got fired, when he was in Cleveland, he had a winning record. I do it a step further. Darvin Ham with a limited roster, in 2 years, he got the Lakers first time around to the Western Conference Finals. But of course, both times what happened? The Lakers lost to Denver because they never had an answer for the Joker. And then, most recently, the albatross that has become the Phoenix Suns. It's like you can't you can't sit up there and expect a head coach to establish himself, to establish his system in 1 year. Usually they got to sit back and be like, you know what? This guy's not working out. I need to bring in a couple of other guys that fit my style. I need to find guys who could play off of my star player. And now you've got coaches looking over their shoulders, um, every year now, possibly, to lose their jobs. I mean, there was actually rumors that Nick Nurse might have lost his job with Philly, and of course the Sixers are like, we're bringing him back. And I know Philly's season was bad, but at the end of the day, it's tough to win when your best players are not available. And just before I turn it back over to the two of you gentlemen, I'll bring up one more name, Taylor Jenkins. He got let go recently by Memphis, and last year they lost 55 games. They didn't have Ja Morant for basically the whole season. Okay, on top of that, the GM, who does not have a basketball background, the GM for the Memphis Grizzlies, I can't remember his name right now. He has a law degree. Okay, so nonetheless, he got rid of all of Taylor Jenkins's assistant coaches. And typically, you know, when you have a head coach, he brings in his own people as his assistants, regardless of the sport. So now you've undermined his power right there. You brought in all new assistant coaches, and then on top of that, you brought in a head coach, brought in an assistant coach rather, excuse me, from Europe, and now you're running his system on offense. And then, of course, once Taylor Jenkins got let go this year with a winning record, it's a situation where, you know what, you promote that head coach and allow him to keep running his system. It's like, how do you how can you be a head coach? And for me, I feel like of all of the major sports, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I feel like the NBA goes through more head coaches than any other sports. That's my opinion.
Like
Well,
it's probably like by a landslide. Like I can't even count on that. But like the crazy thing about the whole Memphis thing, like you were saying, so when it first came out, like nobody knew what was going on, like what the hell happened. Then all of a sudden, last week, I think some reports came out basically saying Ja went to the front office, basically saying he didn't want to run that offense that they were running. Ironically, now the assistant coach is still running the same offense. So now what is he going to do? Go run back up to the front office and complain about them still running the same offense? You really expect them to change the offense just for the postseason? Like, so again, I don't understand the timing of that. Why not just at least let the dude finish out the season? Where you finish is where you finish. And then if you don't want to bring them back next year, fine, because you're going to start from scratch in the offseason with a new coach and a new offense anyway. Same thing in Denver. You know, big head scratcher. How the hell does this dude get fired 2 years after winning a chip? Now reports are coming out saying, and we knew that him and the GM, were at odds for years. But the reports are saying that the owner just got tired, or not even the owner, it was the team president, who's the owner's son, got tired of them just the constant beef, the constant like cloud that it had put over the locker room. So let's just go ahead and fire him now. Again, it doesn't make sense. Why not just finish out the season? And that's where I think that the situation is even more volatile than it normally is, because it's like, all right, it's more than just winning or losing. It's more than just a culture around the locker room. It's, hey, we're going to fire you at any time, at any given reason. And I think people like freaking factory workers have more job security right now than the NBA head coach.
Well, you see, I got my Phoenix hat on, so I got some time to talk about this team. I've been a Phoenix Sun fan since Kevin Johnson and Jeff Hornacek were the two starting guards, okay, and they still had Tom Chambers, okay, and I can tell you this, man. Phoenix has always had two things: a really good point guard, right, and a really good offensive system. You could go from Kevin Johnson to Stephon Marbury to Jason Kidd to Steve Nash. We could keep going, okay? Chris Paul. We could keep going with this, right? And I don't know what they thought they were doing. So let's just rewind. Now, the team was right there. They lost in the finals the year they lost to the Bucks, right? Let's talk about that for a second. Of course, DeAndre Ayton was just not the guy to go up against Giannis. He was soft and he couldn't handle that front court. Everybody else did what they had to do. Of course, Booker was the main ingredient, right? He was the lead scorer, but you had a facilitator, a table setter, and Chris Paul. That's why it worked, right? He had toughness, he brought moxie to the team, and he brought one main thing: accountability. He did not let certain things go. He policed the kid. He policed the team on the court. All right. Fast forward. Okay, he's getting old. I got that. I understood. Right. But what they didn't do was go get a really good backup point guard to give him real breaks. He had Payne. Payne was hot and cold, and every now and again he have a good game. But he was never the table setter that that Chris Paul was. So when he came out, it was a big gap in what was happening offensively. So that's why the Suns lost that series to the Bucks because they really couldn't sub Chris Paul out. And you could go back and watch any of those games. If you watch any of them, you will see the minute they took him out, it was not good. Fast forward, right? The Durant experiment, then they go get Bradley Beal. So now the first year they tried the no point guard. They didn't even have a point guard on the roster. Okay, and they fired this man, and they gave him two ball dominant guards, Kevin Durant. Like, where's the defense coming from? They didn't have a center. Like, the roster was thin. They didn't have enough all around shooting. They had Grayson Allen playing point guard sometimes. He led the league in 3-point percentage, but they didn't have nobody to get him the ball. Like, it was just too many ways that they were just messing up. So he got fired for a bad roster. Okay, fast forward, they bring in Mike Budenholzer. Okay. They get two point guards, they get Tyus Jones, and then they get Monte Morris. Right? They stopped playing Monte Morris. They were just playing Tyus Jones and Colin Gillespie. The last time I cut the game on, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? The offense is in shambles. Everybody's going for themselves, and poor Devin Booker stuck in the middle of this. Poor Devin Booker. He never needed none of them dudes. And this is the shit that this super team thing needs to start failing more. Because let's just look at the teams that are at the top. They drafted all those kids in Houston. They drafted all those kids in OKC, damn near, except for Shea. So you need to start taking your time, building your roster up, letting these young players develop. You know, I hit you in the head with this. I thought about it last night. I'm watching the Clippers game. And I was like, yo, if the Lakers kept Zubac, do you know how hard it would be to beat the Lakers right now? The Lakers traded Zubac for Mike Beasley and Mike Muscala. Let that sink in. Let these teams gel, draft them, let them grow together, and let them get better. Because then you would have had a killer squad if you just kept the kid you drafted. Now you got, a 40-year-old. And look, I get it. I understand how this works. Everybody's a win now thing. But let me just circle back to my point. You are getting coaches fired for bad rosters. Coaches are getting fired for players that don't want to listen, right? Then you have players that are policing themselves. When the Suns let Chris Paul go, they lost their on-court accountability. It didn't matter who was coaching the team. And then you got somebody like Kevin Durant who doesn't hold people accountable because in some ways he doesn't hold himself accountable. And I guess that's probably the most negative thing I'm going to say about the man. I got more feelings, but this is going to be on the internet and it lives forever. So I'm just gonna be nice about it. But you need that. You have to have that on the floor. Forget what the coach is doing. The players on the court have to have that on-court accountability. It's one of the main reasons why Golden State is always winning, no matter who they have, because Draymond brings that on the court every time he subs in the game. Right? You're not going to miss a rotation because he's yelling at you. You're not going to be out of position in your defensive scheme. You're not going to forget where you're supposed to be at. Right? The Suns don't even play defense for real. And then it's the coach's fault. Last thing I'm gonna say, last point I'm gonna make. Coach Todd was on Facebook at this time. We were talking about a game. It was I want to say it was one of the years the Spurs won the championship. And he said on Facebook, he said, "You don't know what the coach told him to do in the huddle." Okay? As opposed to what happened. Do you know how much times coaches have taken heat for things that they told the players to do that they didn't do and it didn't work out?
All the time.
It's happened to me a ton. I mean, I'm giving the play to the quarterback, and the quarterback goes out and runs the wrong play. We don't score a touchdown. It's fourth down. Everybody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Do I sell the quarterback out?
And that's the stuff coaches should get fired for selling the play out in a situation like that, not for it don't work out when it's supposed to work out.
It's part of the game, Mark. And
Yeah.
I don't understand how these organizations. It's almost like it's a video game to these people now. Like it's like fantasy basketball. I don't have the right words for it.
No, listen, you hit the nail right on the head, man. I've said it before. It's a video game culture because it's one of those, listen, back in the days for us, it was NBA Live. Okay, and then Live became 2K. So in those games, because first of all, those games are set up for you to win. So you could get away with having a Brad Beal, a Kevin Durant, and a Devin Booker, on the team. And it's one of those where you could create mega players, all give them like 100 ratings, and then it would fit into the game and you would be fine. It doesn't work like that in real life because winning a championship is not easy. And it's one of those where it's like you have players who, with this expectation that, they have to win, and then you have owners and front office people who have this expectation, and we could just put like if we go out there and we get two or three all-star caliber players, we're gonna go out there and win a championship. It doesn't work like that. I mean, Lakers won that championship in 2020. I think it was like the year after that, or maybe 2 years later, they came back. It was AD, it was LeBron, it was Russ, it was Melo. Who else am I missing on that was on that team? And I don't even think they made the playoffs. And I think that's when Frank Vogel got fired. But nonetheless, y'all understand the point, that I'm trying to make. It's like, listen, we need to start holding these GMs are like more accountable. And the same thing with the ownership, because you look at Phoenix for an example, and you look at how Phoenix has basically mortgaged their future. I don't think the Suns have a first round pick for the rest of this decade.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
They're also in salary cap purgatory. I mean, you figure
Yeah,
just
they had the most expensive salary cap in the whole league
no,
and
no, no,
didn't
no,
make
no,
the
no.
play-in.
Ever. Not just in the league, ever. I mean,
Didn't make the play-in, William.
yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
make the fucking play-in. I was arguing with my nephew and his friends earlier. I said, why do y'all think how can y'all say Kevin Durant's a top 10 player all time? Like, how you saying stuff like that to me? This man
Listen,
didn't make the play-in.
I,
No play-in. You only got to finish 10th, Mark.
listen.
10th.
Before I turn it back over to y'all,
You couldn't get us to the play-in?
but listen, before I turn it back over to y'all on that aspect, Dennis, just to give you an idea of how bad it was for the Suns, the Dallas Mavericks were doing everything in their power not to get that last spot in the play-in, and the Phoenix Suns still couldn't overtake them. Just think about that for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. They sat AD. They were sitting healthy guys. I think PJ Washington sat a couple times.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you made a point earlier, Will, where you were talking about, I can't remember what team it was, but you were saying that the front office dude, the GM dude, is not a basketball guy.
Memphis,
That,
Memphis,
yeah, that's a big part of the problem all across sports, in my opinion, is that these
absolutely,
owners are
absolutely.
hiring lawyers and financial guys and CEOs of big companies to come in and run teams. You can't run a team like you run the boardroom in a business. You might be
Yeah.
able to go ahead and get a quick start business up and off the ground and profitable in less time than you can get an NBA championship team ready. So you can't expect those dudes to have the same type of patience. And because those GMs don't have the same type of patience and the same type of outlooks, they're firing these dudes really, really quick. Like you made a point earlier too, both of y'all, about the video game thing. Like I was reading something, and it actually talked about like how, and I think I brought this up when we did that playoff preview last week. I brought it up where it was like now teams are looking at windows as to, it's not just about winning one championship. Like they're trying to maximize winning two or three or four in a 5 or 6 year span. And if they don't, they're firing their coach a year or two later. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the NBA with 4 out of the last 6 coaches being fired that have won championships. It's crazy that, like I said earlier, winning a championship no longer gets you 3 to 5 years of complete screw ups after that, and then you maybe get fired. It's like right away, you don't win a championship. Maybe not that next year if you don't repeat, but maybe if you don't win 2 out of 3 years, then you're out of here.
Listen, winning a
But
championship. Oh, go ahead, Dennis. Go ahead.
I wanted to touch on that because they got the analytics now, Mark.
Yeah.
Do y'all remember? Hold on, yo. My bad.
Okay.
Like, call me in the middle of this. Do y'all remember the coach that was the JV coach when we all got to Nazareth? He was this chubby Italian guy.
Doesn't not off the top of my
He
head.
was the coach. He was the JV coach when we were all freshmen. Y'all may not have even seen this crazy dude, but he was the first person I've ever seen do it. I'm not sure if he got it from like Loyola Marymount, like those Hank Gather teams. I don't know if y'all remember how those games used to go. I don't even know how much of that
Right.
stuff y'all used to watch. I used to watch a lot of that craziness because me and William used to bet on those games when we was in the back of the lunchroom on the French fries. But you had you had him. He was the first guy I knew because I was close to the guys on the JV team. Because remember, we all played freshmen. And they were the first team I'd ever seen shooting a bunch of threes. And I asked him to explain it to me because I was so interested. It just was so mind blowing. He was like, yeah, twos are more than threes. And you should play like this because if you take more threes and you make less, even if you make less twos, it's still more than the threes. And I was just like, wait a second, this is craziness. And this is 1994.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, he might be right. And even though, as someone that was on the team and I was a shooter myself, I didn't take a lot of threes because it just wasn't the game, how the game was even managed. It wasn't how the game was played. And I keep trying to explain this whole Steph Curry thing to younger kids. I said, yo, I understand Steph Curry's a great, 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 great shooter. And yes, I'll give him the title as the greatest shooter. But we don't know what would have happened if these other guys were allowed to take these shots. I said, yo, do you know what would have happened if I'd have took that shot? Even if it went in, I was getting subbed out.
Yep. Yeah.
If I shot a pull-up three on a fast break, even if it went in, I was coming out. We didn't
Yeah.
even do drills like that. Shooting wasn't even a focus like that. It was, but it wasn't. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, none of us was shooting that many shots. The amount of shots, the type of shots that he gets to take trumps everything else because he is what he is because he was allowed to do that. But
Yeah.
nobody gets when I say that to somebody, they think I'm just saying something that's hate. But if y'all think back of how we had guys like Mark Price, Mark Muradorov, even a guy like Steve Nash, they took a eighth of the amount of shots he takes and none of the type of shots he takes. But they were just as good as shooters. But it was all about being allowed to do it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. Because the analytic guys say, all right, well, the numbers make sense. It's like a business. Oh, this makes the most money.
Yeah.
So we'll sell the most bags of chips because they sell the most. And then you pop in a game right now, and it's a battle of who can take the most bad shots and make them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
see, and see to your point, it's like, like Mark, like you said, this is what happens, excuse me, when you don't have sports people, you know, inside of this, because now that we brought in corporate people, now that they're focusing more on the analytics, and this is all across sports, the fundamentals of the game are down. I mean, listen, Dennis, plain and simple. In your day when you played, you had a 3-on-1 fast break. If you're bringing that ball up, your wings are crashing to the basket, get that layup. Now these kids are stopping at the 3-point line. And then, in your day, if somebody did something like that, they were getting subbed out, and it would be something where you would get subbed out and you would sit, but you would sit for a while. Okay, after that. And like Mark, like you were saying before, this is what happens when you get sports people out of the room. Because to give you an idea, that's what made a guy like Jerry West so valuable to teams even until the very day that he passed away. Because if you remember, Jerry West was brought in as an advisor for the Golden State Warriors. And Jerry West was the guy who they wanted to make that trade with Minnesota, Kevin Love for Klay Thompson. And Jerry West said no. And then, of course, we saw the Golden State dynasty be born. And Steve Ballmer paid a pretty penny to get Jerry West to come back to Los Angeles, of course, with the Clippers. And Golden State was doing everything in their power to keep Jerry West. But the thing is, you need somebody with a basketball mind. A business mind and a sports mind are two different things. We've all played sports. We've all played organized sports. We all know, listen, there are certain things that no matter how much you're coached on certain things, you just see things with your eyes. That's your instincts. You pick that up. Analytics cannot teach you that. And the problem is now the analytical people in the front offices all across sports have so much power, okay, that when a sports person comes in there and contradicts something that, they're going against them rather, they're getting the sports person up out of there. And I think that is a sad connotation for the state of sports. Switching gears to a different sport real quick. 2 years ago in the playoffs, Bucks played the Lions in the second round. Okay, Bucks were down 31-17 in the fourth quarter. It's probably like about 7 minutes to go. Tampa Bay scores a touchdown to make it 31-23. Okay, they then decide to go for a 2-point conversion and it's unsuccessful. So it's still 31-23. And Chris Sims, who was doing play by play for the game, swore by this and said it was the right decision. But I'm like, listen, this is the playoffs. This ain't the preseason. This is not week one. You kick the extra point, it's 31-24. Now you get the ball back. Then, if you score a touchdown, then you can sit up there and decide, okay, if we make it 31-30, do we try to go for a 2-point conversion? Or maybe then you kick the extra point. It's like people are doing stuff just based off of what a piece of paper tells them to do, and that is ruining, a lot of things. I'm like, like coaches are people. They're not robots. Okay, we see it all across sports. Where basically, in baseball, the GM is dictating to the manager. Okay, this guy's not pitching X amount of pitches. You got to take him out. You got to sub for a guy here, this, that, and the third. And they're focusing their game off of analytics as opposed to thinking about it. And it's one of those where that, along with the fact that, hey, you know what, you're not allowing these coaches to go out there and coach. It's a problem. And one other thing I will say before I flip it back over to you guys is that, we've talked about AAU basketball and how it's ruining things. It's also taking away from coaches' ability to coach because, we've heard about this from people where over in Europe, these kids play one game a week and they practice 5 times. Whereas over here with AAU ball, they're playing like 5 times a week and sometimes multiple games a day. Okay. And just practicing one time a week. You don't get better in game situations. You get better in practice because it's one of those where like sometimes you need that one-on-one drill. Sometimes, like just working with a coach because a coach can sit back and watch you during the game and say, "Hey, Dennis, you know what? You're not bringing the ball up properly. You're exposing yourself too much to the defense. Let's go work on this. Let's go work on how you're able to see the pick and roll defensively, things like that. You're not always going to see those in game type situations, and it's one of those where we're at a point, especially with basketball, you're not allowing coaches to coach. Coaches have to be teachers. And of course, as a teacher, you always cannot tell somebody everything that they want to hear. Getting back to Michael Malone with Denver, I'll say it from this point. He was there for 10 years. Maybe the message got stale. Okay, that's a possibility. But also, we heard Michael Malone a couple of months ago be very critical of the way that his team was playing defense. And I will say this: Michael Malone, his fire intensified after Denver won that championship. Why? Because winning a championship is difficult. Trying to go back and win another one is even tougher than the first time around. And he understood that and he tried to instill that in his team. And guess what? They never bought in to his message. And I think that's part of the reason they got him up out of there. And I will say one more thing here. Uh, um, we talked about the beef that Michael Malone had with Calvin Booth. Now, Calvin Booth was not the GM, of course, who brought Michael Malone in. So typically that could be a problem right there. But that right there, that whole situation, I blame on the Denver Nuggets organization. Why? Because if this was a Jerry Buss type situation or a Jerry West type situation with the Lakers and the head coach and the GM or somebody like that ain't getting along, guess what? They're bringing those people in and they're sitting down and they're like, you know what? I'm putting you in this room and you're going to talk until you figure this out and you figure like how to work out with one another. The Nuggets right here, I think they just took the easy way out. You know what? Both of you go home. We'll cut you a check. Thanks for coming. And that right there, to me, I think is also an issue.
I
Another
think they're
thing
gonna.
with the Nuggets too, my fault, D. But
No,
another
you
thing
go, you go.
with the Nuggets in
Hmm.
particular, the situation there with the locker room, he did lose them. And the reason he lost them is a lot of the guys that were there on that team that were his guys over the past couple of years,
They're
the
gone.
GM didn't re-sign.
Right.
KCP, Bruce
Bruce Brown.
Brown,
Right.
those type of guys were Michael Malone type guys, tough defensive nose players, on the court kind of policing the players like Dennis was saying earlier. So that's a huge reason to where now the GM may be trying to play chess in that situation. Hey, let me get rid of his supporters so ultimately he can lose the locker room. And
Yeah.
it may be backfired on him
Yeah.
because he lost his job also in the process.
Right.
Like the Denver situation is a really interesting situation because they still have arguably the best player in basketball playing at the highest level he's ever played before. So
Right.
anybody in the league's gonna want that job. But
Right.
now I think the owners have to do the right thing by getting a basketball guy in the front office. If they get a basketball guy in the front office, then 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to get the right coach to build upon what they already have. If they screw up and try to get a top business dude from some law firm somewhere or some CEO of a Fortune 500 company to come in and try to run this organization like a business like that, then they're going to go ahead and they're going to hire somebody like Frank Vogel or Mike Budenholzer or something like that, and they're going to expect him to win a championship in that first year because they got the best player. And then what's basically going to happen to Jokic is he's going to have the best years of his career wasted. And like I feel sorry for Devin Booker too, dude, because this dude, if you think about it, is now about to have his fourth head coach in the last, what, 5 years, 6 years, maybe, after being right there on the doorstep of winning the championship. Like, you could see this dude's career ascending, like going from being on a terrible team and just being a gunner and doing what he has to do to then finally getting a team, finally getting a veteran leader around him like CP to being right there. And now taking how many steps back, man?
And Dennis, just before, like, no, I was just gonna say this just before you jump in. To your point about Devin Booker, I brought this up before. I brought it up last week, and I'll say it again right now. KD's probably gone. He's probably played his
Yeah,
last game in Phoenix.
yeah.
They're probably going to try to move on from Brad Beal as well. But my point is this with Devin Booker, to everything that you just said, Mark, why would Devin Booker, excuse me, want to stay in Phoenix for a rebuild? He's probably looking at it like, yo, get me out of here too. Because the thing with the Suns, like they don't like they have salary cap issues. They don't have any picks either. So this is not like a quick fix. And I'm like, you got to get picks back for KD. You've got to get picks back for Brad Beal. I'm like, yo, if I'm Devin Booker, I'm telling him, I'm like, you know what? Let me go someplace else as well.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
they
think
traded
they
away young pieces you build around
Yeah,
and Bridges and Johnson. Like
right,
I don't understand. Yeah.
right.
they're not trading Devin Booker. I'm letting you guys know that right now. They've come out and said that numerous times. He's probably the only person that's not going to get traded. And to touch on Bill, I heard rescinded the trade to go to Miami, and where the Phoenix would have ended up with Jimmy Butler, who
Yeah.
might have fixed maybe about, if there was 10 problems, he probably would have fixed about 4 of them, and he
Because
definitely would have made the play in. So he would have caused chemistry. I used to say this a long time ago. You have chemistry creators and you have chemistry killers. You get guys that play, and this goes for a lot of different sports, but basketball happens really quickly, and you just got the right kind of guy. You get the right guy on your team. You put him on the floor, he immediately creates chemistry. You get the wrong guy on your team, you put him on the floor, he immediately kills your chemistry. Do
yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
yeah,
And Jimmy Butler's a chemistry creator. They got actually 2 in Golden State now with him and Draymond. It's really
right.
hard. It's gonna be hard to beat them. But back to the Phoenix thing, they're not trading Devin Booker. They look at him as their prodigal son. They drafted him. And Phoenix is always a team that built themselves through the draft. And this is where they messed themselves up. They tried to go the free agency route, try to do what everybody else is doing and build a stupid team in Phoenix, and it just wasn't ever going to work like that. You're right. I would prefer to have had Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and they were just playing team basketball,
Right.
and they would look something like OKC looks. Do you get what I'm saying? But you go down this other route and you try to skip steps. All right, if you go get Durant, all right, cool. But then you go get Beal. Beal was the actual thing that took it and put it in the toilet. They just had Durant, and the team was still just how it was before, without them having to trade for Beal. Then the team is still sixth in the West, fifth in the West. Fine. All right. Nobody's gonna really bitch too much about that because the West is a tough place to play. All the teams are good. You go get Beal and you guys finish 11th?
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
And
11th? 11th?
but
11th?
but also with them finishing 11th, to give you how bad it to give you a real idea of how bad it was, they finished tied with Portland.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And Portland's in a rebuild right now, okay? And they didn't even have all of their team for the year as well. So that again just adds to how bad that this season was for the Suns.
Let me tell you something. I used to love watching my team play. I always felt like Phoenix played a different brand of basketball, and it
Mhm.
was just a little bit different when you watch them play. Now it's borderline unwatchable. And it's sad. And let's go to Memphis. I want to go to Memphis for a second. You
Mhm.
talked about that whole offense thing, right, Mark? You know what it was? John Morant wanted more pick and roll. You watched him the other night? He
Mhm.
had the ball the whole game in his hand.
Mhm.
And I'm like, because now before you seen him coming out the corner and you saw Bane initiating a little bit more of the offense, he was
Yeah.
getting off, man.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Desmond Bane is coming for somebody's spot. Okay.
Yeah.
They better pay attention to this guy. Yeah, he plays on a team with John Morant, but I don't think there's a big gap in talent or skill. This guy can play. So I don't know what it was about it he didn't like, but I don't know. I just think he's one of those spoiled brats that never bought in. The
Exactly.
dad and the attitude and all those things cause him to just not buy in. I don't think there was anything wrong with what they were doing on offense. They have a multiple faceted team. You got JJ, you got, Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Bane, you got him, they got a deep team, they got a lot of shooting, they got a good team. Edie's not a bomb. That was a good draft pick. Y'all guys finished, y'all was in the hunt. You make them fire the coach. Like,
We're in a generation right now though where the second most powerful person in the organization is the superstar athlete with a signature shoe.
Yeah. 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 And I
that
mean,
was
listen,
that was good. That was really
John,
good. Yeah.
listen. I mean, it's spot on. I mean, you figure, KD has quickly become a coach killer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, listen, 3 straight years in Phoenix, three different head coaches let go. Two of those head coaches won championships. Within a New York minute, Steve Nash was let go with the Nets. And then on top of that, I'll take you a step further. Kenny Atkinson, when he was in Brooklyn, quit before Kevin Durant even played one game because KD was in the locker room undermining what Kenny Atkinson was trying to tell the team. And Kenny Atkinson was like, you know what? I've had enough. And Kenny Atkinson is not a dumb guy. He could have had the Charlotte job. He said no. He went and took the assistant job with Golden State, took over a good team, okay, with Cleveland because JB Bickerstaff had already turned things around. And I don't think Bickerstaff got enough credit for that. He should be this year's coach of the year, in my opinion, for what he's done with the Pistons. But nonetheless, Kenny Atkinson built off of what JB Bickerstaff started in Cleveland, and he's showing, you know what, I'm a legit coach. But on the flip side, if you're KD, you've got a reputation right now as a coach killer, my man. And I think, with all of this player empowerment, there's not a lot of guys in the NBA that are going to put their foot down with it. One guy is Pat Riley. And of course, that's cost him some superstars, and some people will say, you know what, Pat is maybe out of touch, with today's player. Listen, Pat Riley, with Miami, we all know who the boss is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think what the NBA should do with some of their owners, they're probably not going to do it, which is I think they need to take a step from a page from the NFL. And the reason why I say that, we're seeing some teams in the NFL, what they're doing right now, especially with their head coaches. They're hiring the head coach first, and then they're after that they're bringing in the general manager, and it's kind of like as opposed to the head coach reporting to the GM, it's kind of like basically the GM is out there doing the grocery shopping, if you will, for the head coach. You know what I'm saying? And I think we need to see, we should, but it's not going to happen. We should see more of that, in the NBA. I think back to, the Sixers when Larry Brown was there. They hired Larry Brown first, and Larry Brown was the one who brought in Billy King to be his GM. And of course, they worked well together. All right. They had a rapport. But what's going on in the NBA right now, I think it's disgusting. I truly do, in my personal opinion. And it's just like I don't see why a head coach would want to sign up for that unless you know what, unless they're gonna pay you an exorbitant amount of money and you know that you're gonna go home and collect the check, regardless if they fire you or not. Other than that, it ain't worth it, man. It's just not, in my opinion.
I'm gonna let you take it in a sec, Mark. I just want to say the thing that bothered me the most about the KD thing was the outward disrespect on the sideline in the middle of the game. I don't think I'm ever getting over that. It like made me like really feel some type of way as a coach. Like,
Which,
yo, come on, you know what?
but hold up, Dennis. You gotta be more clear. Which time and with which team and with
It
which
don't
head
matter.
coach? Because
I,
because it happened a lot, man.
but this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff where I'm like, after the game, I, yo, dog, like, we could go in the back. I mean, and we could just, we could work this out with, with these fists right now until we come to an understanding that you're not going to do that on nationally televised game and yelling at the like, can you imagine? Just think about that. Like, you seen that before like that? Like, Draymond Green's the most boisterous player in the league. He didn't never do that to Steve Kerr. And Steve Kerr probably tell him, yo, let's fight. I don't care if you're bigger than me. We gonna fight after that. Like Bulldozer, where's your nuts, bro? Like for real. Like
That the like I said, the players, they got too much power, and it's a good thing for them to have power in certain aspects,
Right.
but then it's another thing when it's an organization. An organization with in any type of organization, there has to be pillars and tiers. And
Hmm.
if there's no pillars and tiers, then the organization within itself has no structure, has no foundation.
Right.
And without that, it's going to crumble. And that's exactly what we're seeing all across sports with these organizations that just plummet out of nowhere, where they build something where they think it's supposed to be substantial because on paper it looks good. Like never more before is on paper, I think, a more relevant topic because, this is a thing that has been said in sports for longer than we've been alive, on paper versus on the field or on the court. Now, I think, with the likes of like GMs like Daryl Morey, the separation between on paper and on the field has never been greater. And I'm going to throw out a wild scenario here, and I want to hear y'all opinion on this. And I think the perfect place to kind of maybe take advantage of a situation like this would be Denver with the vacancy in both the GM role and the head coaching role. I think it needs to be more situations where guys who have worked together in the past say, hey, let's team up and let's go out for this job together because we've had success in the past. You know what I like, I know what you like. We
Hmm.
can work together. It's not a situation where this GM's been in place for 3 years and now he's on the hot seat and he's bringing in a new coach. Or this coach has been in a situation for 3 years and he's on the hot seat and there's a new GM, but he's already got his ideas for the next guy coming in, the head coach. Like, what do you guys think about a situation? And we can throw out any pair of people who have worked together. Throw out let's see, Steve Kerr and Bob Myers. They worked together really well in Golden State for years.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, Steve Kerr is not coaching the Warriors anymore. Bob Myers is at ESPN still. A head coaching vacancy opens and a GM vacancy open. They go out for that position or those positions together.
Yeah, no, listen, it has to be like that because the GM and the manager or the head coach, they've got to be there has to be some semblance of order there. I mean, you think about the Lakers dynasty of the 80s. Okay, they had great players, yes. Also, what made it work, you had Jerry West running the front office, and of course, you had Pat Riley as a coach. And of course, he took over after Paul Westhead was let go. But nonetheless, Pat Riley played for the Lakers. Pat Riley won a championship with the Lakers. Jerry West played for the Lakers for so many years. They knew what it meant for the purple and gold, okay? And, it was one of those where Pat Riley was somebody I think that Jerry West respected, vice versa. So there were certain conversations that they were able to have with one another. When you don't have your head coach and your general manager on the same page, it's not going to work. And to another point, we talk about the business world and how some of these corporate people are messing things up. This is why you can't micromanage. This is why if you're going to hire somebody, you have to allow that person to do his or her job. There's a reason why you hired that person. Leave them alone, leave them be. And the bottom line is, you know what? I'm going to give you all of the resources that you need not to fail. You think about Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban he was a majority owner of the Mavericks for about 25 years, give or take, right? Okay. How long did it take for Mark Cuban to go out there and win that championship? It was a lot of trades. It was a lot of drafting, a lot of bringing guys in free agency wise until, he found that chemistry. When Mark Cuban first got there, basically let Donnie and Don Nelson run things. He stayed out of their way, okay? And then, of course, once Don Nelson stepped down, it was Avery Johnson that was running the show. And what got Avery Johnson fired was, the Mavericks became the first team to win at least 67 games in the regular season and not win the championship. Matter of fact, they're the only team in NBA history to win at least 67 games in the regular season and not win a playoff series. Okay, but nonetheless, you've got to allow your people to do their job. Prime example, and I know you about to jump out of your chair when I throw this name out there. Sean Marks. You think about what Sean Marks has done for the Brooklyn Nets, and that dude still has a job. Okay, they are giving him every opportunity possible to try to figure things out. My point is, sometimes patience is not good. Sometimes you need that patience. But, again, in the corporate world, it's kind of like, again, you have your yearly review and it's like, well, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, so we're going to let you go. Here's a severance package. We're going to, move you on and bring in somebody else. It doesn't work like that in the sports world. And my other thing with the Suns is this. This is going to be the fourth different head coach in the last 4 years for them. But the GM and James Jones still remains the same. So I'm like, at some point, when are you going to stop blaming the head coach? And when are y'all in the front office going to look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe it's us who's the problem?
Absolutely, man. And here's the thing, like I just thought about this too, along with the whole coaching GM package deal thing. Sean Marks, you made me think about this with this guy. This dude is about to, I think Fernandez, I'm sorry, is his seventh head coach, if I'm not mistaken, in his tenure of
Sounds
GM.
sounds about right. Jock Vaughn, Steve Nash, uh,
Atkinson. Um,
Atkinson, Fernandez, Kevin Ollie was an interim head coach. I
right,
think I think Lionel Hollins was also in that mix as well.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's like six right
Yeah.
there off the top of
It's
my
about seven, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
But there should be like, I don't know, some type of rule to where if you get rid of three coaches and it's not like extreme circumstances where they need to get rid of, you're next. You're automatically out the door because you have shown three different times that you have hired the wrong person and and let that person go. You have
Yes.
also proven that you cannot put together the proper roster for different types of coaches because it's not a situation where if you're going through three different coaches, you're bringing in three coaches with the same philosophies who run the same offense or the same defense or same rotations. You're bringing in guys who are different all across the board.
Right.
So you're proven that not only do you not identify the right candidate for the job, but you're also proving that no matter what the candidate or who the candidate is, you can equip them with the right pieces and players around them to be successful. So, in essence, you suck at your job, so you should no longer have it.
Listen, you're 100% right, man, because you look at the Boston Celtics, okay, they just won the championship last year. They have a very good opportunity to win the championship again this year. Okay, but getting to the championship was a steady work in progress. I mean, you think about it. When they decided to move on from Doc, it was mutual because Doc didn't want to be a part of a rebuild, okay? And they shocked a lot of people when they brought in Brad Stevens because you figured when Brad Stevens left Butler, it was going to be for something big, and a lot of people figured, okay, maybe he's just waiting for Coach K to leave Duke and then he takes over there. He took it a step further with the Celtics. All right. And I think Brad Stevens' first year in Boston, they didn't make the playoffs. Every year after that, they were a playoff team, but it was a slow and steady build. And then, of course, uh, that like one-sided trade with the Brooklyn Nets, helped to expedite that because two of those picks resulted in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But my point is just like you have to have patience because it was a slow build. You allowed Tatum and Brown to develop. You started bringing pieces in around them. Marcus Smart was a key player on a lot of those teams for years until he was traded. And then when Boston tried to like speed things up when they said, you know what, let's bring in Kyrie, they got worse. And it's just like it's one of those where I think too many of these owners in the NBA nowadays, they feel like we need star players in order to win. And it's kind of like, you know what, let's go out there and trade for a guy. You look at the Clippers, and we know the disaster of the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George era. Can you imagine what the Clippers would be right now if they just had more patience and said, you know what, this SGA kid, he's got potential? Because that is looking more and more like a one-sided trade right there. These guys nowadays, there is zero patience. It's kind of like,
Did you hear
it's
what Doc Rivers said? Did you hear what Doc Rivers had to say about that?
hold up, just give me 1 minute. But I was just gonna say also with that, it's kind of like watching people play Madden against the computer or NBA 2K or of course back in the day NBA Live, and they lose one game and they hit the reset button because they don't want to go 15-1 in the regular season. They want to be 62-0. I mean 16-0. They don't want to go 60-22 in the regular season in the NBA. They want to go 82-0. And it's kind of like that same mentality. It's like, we gotta win, we gotta win now. And it's costing them, man. It truly is, man. But D, go ahead with what you were saying about Doc Rivers, man.
Doc Rivers said Kawhi Leonard came up to him and asked him, they asked him for the trade to get Paul George. He asked for Paul George. He says, listen, give me a year. I think we got the guy right here. He's pointing at SGA. He says, I go take him maybe a year or two, but if you give me a little time, I think we got the kid right here. I think he's going to be that good. He said it in a podcast maybe like a week ago. I don't know how y'all guys didn't see it, but like if you
Hmm.
find it,
No,
it'll
I
it'll
heard
blow it.
I
It'll blow
heard
your
about the
mind.
whole thing when like, with Kawhi and everything, he was like, I want to play with him. And like they showed him like a bunch of pictures of players or whatever, or something like that. And he pointed at Paul George. I heard about that, but I didn't hear about the whole like Doc was like, nah, SGA. I
He
didn't hear
tried
that
to
part.
get them to keep him. He tried to get them to keep him, and it's kind of hilarious because, like I said to you earlier, imagine the Lakers didn't trade Zubats. They
Yeah.
traded Zubats because they wanted to stretch four.
Yeah.
Where's Mike? Where's Mike Muscala? Can somebody find him? Zubats is one of the best bigs in the league right now,
Right.
and
And
he's
see,
everything that they need right now.
Right.
and see, that's the problem because it's like a lot of these trades where we see superstar guys traded, it's the guys who are the throw-ins or the picks that nobody pays attention to that work out to have the biggest impact. Because listen, a good friend of mine, okay, I can tell you the conversation that him and I had when the Nets and Celtics made that trade and Brooklyn got back Paul Pierce, KG, and and Jason
Jason
Terry,
Terry. Yeah.
right, from Boston. And I said it at the time because David Stern was still the commissioner of the NBA, and I read the details of that trade, and I saw everything that the Nets were giving up. And it was one of those trades. I joked with him, and I'm like, I'm sure that David Stern probably called up Mikhail Prokhorov, who was the owner of the Nets at the time, and said, "Are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to do this?" And everybody figured, okay, it would be no big thing with the Nets giving up those picks. I said, okay, watch out because like it didn't work out with their quote unquote super team, if you want to call it that, with Brooklyn. All right. And then what ended up happening? Paul Pierce and KG got old real quick. They bounced. Darren Williams was gone. The Nets were bad again. They didn't have any of those players. All right. And then the next thing you know, those picks turned out to be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Okay. And nobody paid attention to it. Nobody paid attention when SGA was a part of that deal with going to OKC for Paul George. It's just like with the Brooklyn Phoenix trade, with Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, and of course, Mikal Bridges during his time with the Nets clearly showed that he was a man. Parlayed that into reuniting with some of his Villanova guys across the river with the Knicks, things like that, man. And it's just this is like the old saying goes, and I hopefully I get it right. You can't see the forest for the trees, if you will. And it's one of those where basically these guys are not seeing the big picture because it takes some time to develop. OKC and Sam Presti are infamous, okay, for developing their guys. Sometimes a little bit too patient. That's a whole nother topic for another day. And then y'all brought it up earlier about the Houston Rockets. Listen, that whole James Harden era, it didn't work out. The Rockets were like, listen, we're gonna start over. And you look at all the picks that the Rockets have gotten, and now they brought in the right coach for those young guys with Ime Udoka. Yo, the Rockets have something. I mean, I know they overpaid for Fred Van Fleet in free agency. They went out there and paid for Dylan Brooks in free agency as well. But again, you've got to go out there and you have to exercise patience. And that is a problem. It's like every single time now that we get a new owner for one of these NBA teams, this dude just struts in with a bag of money, his chest poked out, and he thinks, you know what? He's a billionaire. He's made his fortune. He's in some cases arrogant, okay, definitely confident, okay. And you know what? I can go out there and I can win a championship, and I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. More often than not, they fall flat on their face every single time.
They don't realize sports is a total different animal.
Hey,
What made them great in the boardroom isn't going to necessarily make you great in sports because here's the thing, you got so many different variables that can contribute to whether
hmm
you win or lose.
yeah,
And that's not the case in there. And I think again, kind of tying back to the and this is I'm this I just blew my own mind with this correlation I just made. I think that's why those individuals have such a tight bond to the superstar signature shoe athlete because they're kind of cut from the same cloth and they can kind of walk in each other's shoes, so to speak, so many different ways. And who's that leave on the outside? The GM with the basketball mind or the sports mind, depending on what sport it is, and the head coach with that sport mind on whatever it is. They're the outsiders looking in, and they're the ones that are losing their jobs right and left because just like the head coaches, the GMs, it's like, and that's why, to your point, they don't get the time to develop these teams because it's such a quick, we got to make a box cake. Nobody wants to make a cake from scratch anymore.
right.
Everybody just wants to open up the box, add the egg, add the milk, stir it, and want a cake 30 minutes later.
You know, you made me think of something, Mark, too, just now, because I was thinking about the next coach, right? Who's next on this list? And how could we ignore what we have right here, Tom Thibodeau? Let's talk about it for a second. I happen to have some ties to some of the Knicks people or whatever, and the more I pay attention to it, the more you have to realize he's next. They gave him players that aren't his style of players, right? Follow me now,
Hmm.
right? I'm not sure if he signed off on this whole cat thing, but it changed the whole dynamic and the whole personality of his team,
Yep.
right? And they're not as good as they were with what most people would consider less talent. So he's the next scapegoat. He's the next person that's going to pay for this analytics, for the person not looking at what happens. I talk to young guys all day long now, and I like to talk to these young guys about sports because it gives you a picture into how their brains work. They say stuff to me like, uh, James Harden is better than Dwayne Wade, or Kevin Durant is better than Michael Jordan. And they say stuff like Alex Ovechkin is better than Wayne Gretzky. And I'm just looking at them like, wait, have you seen enough of any of these sports to make these statements? No, they're just living it now. And the guys you're talking about, Mark, they haven't even paid attention to enough basketball to understand how much they don't know to how their decisions are bad, and because we're all the old heads now, and we don't know anything because we old heads and we don't understand the triple double step back jump shot, and we think it's a travel, so we don't know the game, and we're automatically canceled out because we just look at it from a holistic view because we actually have been watching the game that long to see it change from one thing to the next. For
Right.
us, we're in an interesting age group because we're on our third change of the league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, listen, D, to your first point, man. I agree with you about Tibbs because the New York media has already started to put the rumblings out there. That's number one. And to your point, Tibbs is probably going to pay for the sins of the people above him because I said it at the time of the trade. I follow Carl Anthony Towns' career in the NBA. His numbers historically diminish his production in the postseason in comparison to the regular season. You might be able to fly under the radar with that in Minneapolis. You're not going to fly under the radar with that in New York City. And I think the Knicks, over the summer pre Carl Anthony Towns, the Knicks went out there and made moves because their whole thing was, you know what? We got to go out there and get past the Celtics. How do we get past the Celtics? We get better on the wings. That was their whole mindset. But in doing so, they lost their interior framework because they let Hartenstein go on free agency. They weren't going to pay him 20 mil like OKC did. That was big for them. All right, because now you only have Mitchell Robinson, and then Mitchell Robinson cannot stay healthy. And you can't really realistically think that Mitchell Robinson in a 7 game playoff series is going to slow down a Kristaps Porzingis. So Thibodeau's teams historically have been defensive teams. You don't have a team full of defensive guys. Carl Anthony Towns is not a defensive guy. That's why they had to go out there, Minnesota did, and get Rudy Gobert. Okay. So it's going to cost him his job. I truly do believe that. And then on top of that, like I keep saying, Tibbs's guys, regardless of whatever team that he's coached, they always run out of gas in the postseason. So they're not going to go far. Like the Knicks, Mark, you and I talked about this a couple of days ago. They're going to have to pack a lunch, okay, to get past the Pistons in round number one. That's first and foremost. And if they do lose that series, listen, Tibbs is up out of there. But I think Tibbs is a little bit different, from some of these championship coaches. Of course, he hasn't won a championship on top of that. I still think Tibbs has the locker room. That's the thing for me. I think some of these guys they never had the locker room because a guy like Adrian Griffin with Milwaukee, he was an assistant coach for a long time. And this is why, like when Adrian Griffin first got fired by Milwaukee, my first thing I said was, why isn't the organization being held accountable? Because you mean to tell me y'all just spent all of this time and effort over the summer to interview to do a coaching search. And then this is the best candidate that y'all felt that you had for the job. And from day one, he's running a defense that your best players do not like. So y'all should have done a better job or research right there. Number two, they shouldn't have let Mike Budenholzer go in the first place because they pushed the panic button when they lost to Miami in the first round that year. And it was two things: a, Jimmy Butler punked them, and like when I always talk about Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, he takes people's lunch money. That's number one. Number two, Giannis was not healthy. Okay, and it's like some of these people, they're looking at it from, wow, we shouldn't have lost to an eight seed that actually turned around and got to the finals. All right,
Right.
but nonetheless, it's one of those where you have to be more practical about things. And that's the problem when you let a piece of paper, a computer printout, dictate to you the way things should be in sports. And sports is all about instinct. Sports is about using your mind along with the athletic ability. Some of these corporate people simply do not get it.
Very
Right.
good point.
Going back to Thibodeau, like you guys said, this dude is probably next. And I mentioned it last week. You think about it, like with the situation that's coming up with Detroit, that's going to be a tough series. If
Hmm.
they win it, they'll probably win it in 7.
Yeah.
That's not going to look good with Tibbs. The situation with them with the whole minutes, that's not going to look good.
Right.
With the whole Mikal Bridges saying one thing, him saying another thing. That trust me, that is still on Leon Rose's mind right now.
Yep.
Now, if they do get past Detroit, they go to that second round. They're gonna lose in that second round to Boston, and they're
Hmm.
probably gonna lose very easily.
Like you said,
That's gonna be
it might be a gentleman's sweep.
gentleman's sweep there.
They won't
So,
get a game. They won't get a game against Boston.
so there goes Tibbs out the door right there. Because guess what? We ran it back basically with a better team this year in the front office's mind, and
Hmm.
you didn't do anything. You got similar results, if not worse results, because you lost easier this year than last year.
Hmm.
Like I said before, Mike Malone is out there. Michael Malone is out there. Queens guy.
Yep.
Got ties to the organization. That's
His
who
dad.
they're already drooling, salivating over right now. Hey, here's a championship guy. Tibbs is a championship defensive coach in their eyes, which he is.
Hmm.
Not a championship head coach. Let's get
Right.
him out of here and let's get Malone in here because he can win.
Right. Nah, listen, you're 100% right, man. You're 100% right.
You know, and back to what you were saying, William, a little bit. You know, like who's giving these coaches time to build? Like even down to Taylor Jenkins, they allowed him to build that Memphis team into something, and then fired him right when they were on the cusp of actually turning the corner. Almost like, all right, you got us far enough. All right, we got it from here. Well, what are you doing? Like, what's the real plan with any of these organizations that are doing these knee-jerk reaction firings of these coaches? Mike Malone is the Nuggets, man. He was there 10 years. Jokic came out and said he didn't even have another coach. He was about to
Right.
cry, it looked like, you know? And for me, like I said, from a coach's perspective, because that's what I do, I'm really bothered by how these things are going down. I'm really bothered how these coaches are being just unceremoniously ousted out of their positions that they have worked really hard to get A and B, really hard to manage all of those players, man. It's not easy. And maybe Mike Malone had the least amount of divas. I wouldn't even say that. So I don't even know what the issue could have been. Because what you were talking about too was about what they were saying with the GM. I read somewhere the GM was mad that he wasn't playing some kid that they took in the second round named Pickett
Yeah.
over
Oh,
Westbrook in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. I'm gonna put this Pickett guy in, and I got Russell Westbrook over here. No, I'm putting Russell Westbrook in, bro.
Yeah, he
Dennis,
wanted them to play younger guys. GM wanted them to play younger guys. Malone wanted to play the guys that he knew and trusted.
I'm gonna take, your Denver scenario and your Memphis scenario, and I'm gonna raise you one. I'm gonna throw in the Sacramento Kings. We saw Sacramento, get up off of Mike Brown earlier this year, and let's be realistic. From 2006, okay, to just 2 years ago, the Kings had not made the playoffs. No play-in, nothing, no winning record, absolutely nothing, because they tore that thing down with Rick Rattleman. They didn't bring him back. Next thing you know, Chris Webber was bouncing around, Bibby, all of these guys. Okay. So Mike Brown came in there and gave them some semblance of order. Got ahead of things. They got to the playoffs that year. And if you remember, they were up on Golden State in that series until De'Aaron Fox got hurt. That changed everything. They were right there in the mix to be a playoff team last year, and then all of their injuries happened just before the postseason. That was the end of that. De'Aaron Fox went to those dudes and was like, "Yo, this year, do not fire Mike Brown." They turned around and fired Mike Brown, and of course, the next thing you know, De'Aaron Fox was like, "You know what? Get me out of here as well." That's the problem. Like you got to have patience, but on top of that, you've got to be more realistic about things because, yo, 2 years ago, when the Kings got to the playoffs and they were going at it with the Warriors in that series, that atmosphere at that Golden One Center was electric. Okay, it's the same thing with Memphis with Ja a couple of years ago. You know, we saw. I think Memphis was a 2 seed that year. They beat Minnesota in the first round. That's when T Morant was dapping up Cat's dad on the sideline. You know, next thing you know, he's sitting courtside with Usher because you know he's like a Usher lookalike and all this other stuff. And yo, Memphis had something, but you've got to be patient with these teams. You bring in a head coach, you've got to give him the opportunity to go out there and develop the guys. I mean, it's getting to the point that, like Mark, like you said before, with guys maybe wanting to opt for the college deal, and okay, you still got to worry about the NILs and the transfer portal. But nonetheless, either that assistant coach job is looking real good, or you know what? Let me pick up a microphone and call the games, or let me be a
Yeah.
studio analyst. You know what I'm saying? It looks like it's more viable because why do you want to deal with the garbage?
No,
And you know, and
absolutely.
yeah, and real quick about Sacramento, and I'll pass it over to you, Mark. Like the whole Sacramento thing. What did you get? So you turned yourself into the Bulls in California. You got DeRozan with Levine. They're gonna score a bunch of points, make some cool dunks, and they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose again.
Listen,
What did you get for that?
Sacramento got off of that team too quick because Kevin Herter was part of that deal. They sent him to Chicago. You still got Keegan Murray, you still got Malik Monk, but they had something, working with that team because you had Malik Monk coming off the bench. Okay, you had DeRozan, you had some bonus, in your starting five, and it was something like, you know what, let's build upon this because De'Aaron Fox was a star in the making, and y'all simply went out there and ruined it. Now, for my money, I think De'Aaron Fox resigns with San Antonio because he's looking at the writing on the wall. I get to play with Wemby for like the next 10 years because I think they're gonna take care of that blood clot issue. That's
Yeah.
that's just my thought. It's going to get taken care of, and then the Spurs have themselves a lottery pick this year, and this is a deep draft this year. So even if you don't get top five, you're still going to sit up there and get yourself a quality player. So De'Aaron Fox is looking at this like I got Wemby, I got a lottery dude coming in, and even if Pop doesn't coach this team, they're going to bring in a quality coach down there in San Antonio. So he might realistically have himself a better situation long term in San Antonio than he did Sacramento.
No, but it
It's
was
just
a
a
really good situation in Sacramento, though, man. If you think about it, like that atmosphere was college-like
Yeah,
atmosphere, man.
yeah,
The way how that crowd used to react over lighting the beam and everything,
yeah.
it was infectious, and it
Mhm.
started to really build momentum. They had a really good nucleus all across the board. Where did they go wrong? They went wrong when the GM decided, like you said, to put Herter in that deal and bring over DeRozan. You
Yeah.
can't bring over DeRozan. I think that NBA teams in general, all across the board, hear me out. If any NBA front office person is listening, listen and hear me out on this. It doesn't work when you bring in a veteran superstar to a team of young players. You got to bring in a veteran glue guy to those situations.
Yeah.
OKC, perfect example, did the right thing with bringing in a guy like Alex Caruso. That's the type of veteran guy you want to bring into a team with a bunch of young dudes that's already making their names, and you got a couple of young superstars. You don't want to bring in a guy like DeRozan who used to be the man, because now some of these dudes used to look up to this dude, and now maybe they feel that they're stepping on his toes, and they got to let the OG do his thing.
Right.
Guess what? If the OG messes up the chemistry with the team, that's not necessarily doing what's best for the team. You
Hmm.
bring in a guy like Caruso, SGA is never going to feel like he's stepping on that dude's toes. Jalen Williams is never going to feel like he's stepping on that dude's toes.
Right.
So I think that these teams need to really look at stuff like that. Once they did that, that was the beginning of the end of the Sacramento Kings, and they doubled down on their losses when they brought LaVine in. They just went ahead and said, okay, screw it. We're not going to be anything going forward. And I feel sorry for Sabonis because now you thought that after the whole situation with Indiana, because that was kind of messed up that he got out of Indiana, and then you bring him here and they think you build something with Fox, and now Fox is gone, and now here it is, you're going to be starting from scratch all over again because they barely held on to that playing berth. So what do they do with that? Now the whole thing is ripped down again. And if Memphis isn't careful, they're going to be in the same situation next year or the year after that Sacramento is in right now.
Listen, I totally agree, man. I totally agree.
That's an interesting point about Memphis and tying them into that. But I think Memphis just loves Ja Morant so much that I don't think they'll go that route and actually deal him. And now, if they do, it'll be like an off court thing. It won't be like an on court thing because it's not like Darren Fox ever gets in trouble. But
Right.
this is going to be a real inflection point for the NBA because it's two things. Well, back to the Sacramento, that the San Antonio thing. I got a theory. I think the NBA wants Cooper Flag there. And if they somehow can manipulate that, but Cooper Flag will be the perfect person to play with Wemby, and it will be the perfect person to go to that team. But let's stay on topic. But the NBA has got to be scared right now because I looked it up last night. I'm watching the Clippers game. Great game, Clippers Warriors game. One of the best games I watched all year. Steph Curry's 37. James Harden's 35. Kawhi Leonard is. We can look it up. I think he's about 35. So LeBron's 40. Everybody knows that. But what we aren't paying attention to is all of the other good players are 35, 36, 37. Who's next? You got Ant Edwards. He seems to be the only one. And then where is it coming from? Who's going to lead your league into this next transition point? You got a players league. You're not letting the coaches coach. The NBA is really, really hurting themselves right now.
They're all overseas born players. Like if you think about it, or the next level of players, Giannis, Jokic, SGA from
Canada.
All these
Wemby.
These dudes is from
Wemby,
Wemby, Like, you go down the list. Like that's I think the bigger problem is you go down the list and finally you get the Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum being, American players that are considered in that top 10 kind of range. But everybody else is pretty much, born somewhere else.
Yeah.
And we forgot Luka.
Luka,
So, I mean, as I pay attention, this coaching problem is becoming a huge, huge thing because they're trying to remove like some of the culture from the teams, and the culture is the most important thing,
Well,
and that culture is created through the coaches and the organization.
Well,
and I don't know what these organizations are doing.
Well, to your point,
here's the thing.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Here's the thing: coaches are exactly the hugest part of the culture, and now coaches are not being allowed to coach. They're basically just executives on the court. They're representatives of the front office, basically liaisons of the front office, doing the front office's bidding in a way, in a basketball sort of way. They're not able to actually coach the players. They're not able to hold them accountable. They're not able to put things in their face and really say, hey, look, this is where you screwed up. We need to fix this. So that way it doesn't happen next time and we get better and don't lose in that situation. We win. That's the big problem, I think, here is that a coach is no longer allowed to do what their job is, which is to coach, and they're just a representative of the front office.
No, listen, you're spot on, man. I mean, you look at it. I mean, imagine if Allen Iverson played in this era. He might not have been able to be the player that he became because there wouldn't have been anybody there to hold him accountable because the 76ers with Larry Brown, they were dead serious about trading him to the Clippers once upon a time. Okay. But then on top of that, you got these business people running things. You got them focusing on the analytics, and it's just like they've gotten rid of the vets already in the locker room. You know what I'm saying? It's like very few teams have vets, and I think it's important because just like it is on any other job, if you get a new job right now, it might be somebody there who's been there for like 5 or 6 years. They might take you aside and like, listen, this is how X, Y, and Z has to be done here. You know what I'm saying? But in some cases, like with some of these teams, you got babies raising babies. You know what I'm saying? And it's because they figured, you know what, we can go younger and we can just go cheaper or whatever like that. Cheaper has its place at some point, but it's not always the best thing. But I think at the end of the day, you've got to get back, and this is my final thought on it. You've got to get back to having basketball people run the show. I'm not sure if it's going to happen because every time that you get a new uh person that comes in and purchases one of these teams, more often than not, it's a business person, and I get it. It's always been business people that have owned the teams, yes, but you've had business people that, have some type of sports acumen. I know that it hasn't worked out championship wise yet for Steve Ballmer with the Clippers. But Steve Ballmer is a legit sports fan, and I call him Mark Cuban 2.0 from the standpoint that he's going to go out there and give his team all of the resources needed to try to go out there and win. And I think finally the Clippers have realized, hey, this whole superstar thing, might not work like that because they finally got rid of Paul George's. They got tired of Paul George, with his garbage, and it worked out because now they let PG-13 go, and Norman Powell got more of a run. Norman Powell should have been an All-Star this year. Okay, and I think it was a total, embarrassment that he wasn't. And of course, in the case of Paul George, every time he leaves the team, they get better. You know what I'm saying? So again, it shows you that, you know what, it's not always about, these star players. It's not always about the name on the back of the jersey, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, listen, you gotta have guys that work together. And I think this is where the chemistry aspect, comes in. And this is where you can't rely on a piece of paper. You've got to use your brain. You've got to use your mind. And a coach knows the tenor of his team. He sees that chemistry day in and day out because with a team, it's not just about the courts. It's like, yo, how do these guys bond off the court? Yo, we linking up. Yo, what are we doing? We going to hang out, this, that, and the third. I mean, you look at Milwaukee, getting back to Milwaukee and how they destroyed that whole thing. Coach Bud aside, when they got up off of Drew Holiday for Dame, because they were like, listen, we needed more scoring at the point guard position. Drew Holiday was and is a legit point guard. Okay. Every place that Drew Holiday has gone, because he is a legit point guard, he's made that team better. You look at the Boston Celtics and how he got them over the hump. You look at Milwaukee when he got them there and they got over the hump. Okay. And to that point, when Drew Holiday got traded from Milwaukee to Portland, he was heartbroken because he was like, listen, Milwaukee was a community. I take my kids to the same school as some of the other players do. We walk them to school and all this other stuff. And now you've lost that chemistry, and Milwaukee's not gotten that back. And I got news for you. And I said it when the trade went down. Milwaukee was not going to win with Damian Lillard. And again, you can't just sit up there and say, you know what, let's go in here and let's plug in a superstar player and automatically it's going to result in a championship. It does not work, but good luck explaining that to these corporate people.
Yeah, the GMs they play 2K first. They try the trades out on 2K first, and if it looks good, they do it in real life.
Well, wasn't it with the New York Jets? I think the son of Woody Johnson
Yeah,
was like checking out guys' Madden ratings
yeah.
and going back and going back and
Yeah.
telling his dad whether or not they were viable for the team. I mean, listen, that just gives you an idea of where we are in sports.
But this is a microcosm to the youth. Like I said, I spent a large part of my day in a group chat with a bunch of 20-year-old young guys that watch, like they were like our version of us, right? They watch all these sports, but they don't understand any of it. They look at the one-on-one moves, and that makes the guy better than a guy that might pass the ball a little bit more. They look at the stats and say, "Oh, he scored more, so he's nicer." We don't care if he never won a chip because he could get a triple double. And I'm just like, the most important stat in sports is wins and losses. I said, explain to me why the hell you're going to score all these points if the points you score don't equal the wins. So if you score all these points and they equal the more losses than wins, how good are you?
Yeah. Listen, you go back to and you look at the NCAA tournament that just finished. Matter of fact, last Monday night, okay? Florida won. And one of the reasons why Florida won, they played D. And then on top of that, they actually ran an offense. Guys were
Mhm.
moving without the basketball. Guys were setting picks. Guys were cutting to the basket. Okay. That's what it comes down to. It's not, it wasn't about me, me, me. It was about us. Okay. And it's like you have selfish players who don't want to buy in to what the coach is selling. And it's just like, and then they still expect to go out there and win a championship. I guarantee you, there's going to be a lot of heartbroken people this year with the NBA playoffs when their team doesn't win because guess what? It's still a team sport. No matter how many superstars you put out there, it's still a team sport. And I guarantee you, whoever hoists that Larry O'Brien trophy in about 2 months is going to be the best team. It is each and every year. The formula for it does not change.
I think the NBA, like I said before, needs to really be afraid of these older guys still having such a big impact. Just think
Yep.
of the stars that we watch play getting to their mid 30s. Curry is 37. James Harden is out there like you still can't guard him. He's 35 and he looks like he's fat, but he's killing people. And I'm like,
Well,
you mean to tell me?
there's a reason for that, Dennis. I mean, my opinion, it's the fact that hey, these guys have been able. I know, like people are going to talk about the conditioning, this, that, and the third. These guys have been able to extend their careers, A, because of the load management, B, because they don't exert as much at the defensive end of the court that we've seen players exert once upon a time in the NBA. It's kind of like, you know what, you got by me, go ahead, do your thing. I'm not jumping with you.
Same
You
on the
know,
offensive end though, too. Like not just the defensive end, the offensive end. You don't got guys driving to the hole every possession. You got guys just spotting up,
yeah.
taking threes, pull up threes.
And
So
then
that just that alone, if you're doing that for an 82 game season, you might be able to play an extra year or two.
Yeah. Well,
not
it's
to men-
gonna end sometime, man.
not
When it ends, it's gonna be bad.
not to mention the isolation
Yeah.
offenses where it's like basically one guy is holding the basketball for 20 seconds and like everybody else is literally just standing on the court. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
yo, you're
You're
not,
not even working up a sweat until
no,
three,
you're
four
not.
minutes in the game until,
You're not. Listen, going to the days, of like the Patrick Ewings, where like that dude would run up and down the court, and the guys who had to mop, at the Garden, they had to earn their money that night. You know. But just in closing, final thought, before we sign off, man. Um, do you think there will ever be a turning point where coaches will somewhat get some more control in the NBA, or have we officially opened Pandora's box forever?
they got to strike. It's the only way.
And
The coaches union, they got to strike.
yeah, and I don't see it happening, man.
No,
I simply don't, man.
I don't either. But that's the only way. Anything would change with anything in life. If
Hmm.
you get finally pissed off to the point where you do something about something, and most of the time when it's work related, it's a strike. So
Well, to quote the late great Robin Harris, they would have to get pissed off to the highest level of festivity.
I mean, they're gonna have to do something because it's just this is going the opposite way fast, and it's not getting any better, and it's not helping the game.
No.
no,
Imagine being a parent and the kid's telling you what to do. Imagine you tell your kid to go to bed, they don't like it, or take out the garbage, and then you come back. Oh, your kid doesn't want to be your kid anymore. They went to another parent's house.
right,
Listen,
right.
listen, listen. I could tell you in my life. I've done like when I was younger. I did a lot of powerlifting. Okay, and it was one of those where I listened to the guys who came before me, and I learned from them. My point is nowadays, as an older guy, you try to talk to some of these younger kids about like powerlifting, they know more than you did. Meaning like, you know what, they don't want to listen to you, even though you've been the guy who's been there and done that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like it extends, on any aspect, what I'm saying, whether it's, like the sports, right across the board with sports. And that right there is a big problem. It's just like, you got to sit back and you got to listen to the people who came there before you because they have insight. And maybe sometimes they might have made some mistakes and maybe they can sit back and say, hey, listen, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I went out there and made, so you can actually go out there and be better than I was. You know what? But at the end of the day, basketball is like anything else. It's going to humble you. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, some of the greatest players that have ever stepped on the court and played basketball have been humbled. And at the end of the day, they got better, after they were humbled because everybody's got to have a hurdle or two or three that they have to overcome in order to get to that championship point. There's nobody has been immune from it.
Absolutely right, man.
Yeah. So in closing, okay, I leave the floor open to both of you fine gentlemen and any closing thoughts that you want to leave us with. Dennis, I'll start with you, man.
And hey, listen, first of all, man, this was a pleasure as it always is. Mark, great to have you on, man. We gotta do this a lot more, man. I appreciate talking to guys that understand me sometimes, you know. When you talk to these young guys, you start to think that you're crazy a little bit. So this is a little bit refreshing, you know. So I'm definitely be ready to go if we're gonna do any of these things again. Got the NFL draft coming up. I'm not sure if you're into as much football, Mark, but me and William do it all pretty much. And we gotta do our draft stuff, Mark.
Yeah,
So
let's definitely do something for the draft. I'm down for that.
yeah. So I'll definitely look forward to that. This is like a yearly thing. Me and William ain't missed the draft yet. So
Word. Yeah, I'm definitely down for that.
Mark, any final thoughts, my man?
Man, I just hope it gets better because
Oh,
at the rate we going, we're gonna start seeing coaches, getting fired at the All-Star break more. And we're gonna hey, I didn't like the way you ran that training camp. You got these guys running too hard on drills. You're out of here. That type of stuff, man.
well, listen, Dennis, only thing I can tell you, man, is like, listen, man, you might want to get that LinkedIn resume ready because I mean, at this point, you got some coaching experience on there. You might be, looking appealing to the NBA, man.
hey, listen, I just came back from Penn State, man. You go to these places and you see these things up close, you'll just
Hmm.
be like, whoa. Tyler Warren happened to be there. And he walked past me. Whoa, that dude is huge, man.
Well,
And the kid 33 walked past me too. So he's a specimen too, man.
listen,
So
Tyler Warren's about to be a rich man in about 2 weeks, man. Give or take, as far as what team takes him, because I don't think he's gonna have to wait. You know, if his name's not called on Thursday night, I'll be shocked. That's just my opinion. But
oh no, no, he's going in the first
Right.
yeah,
round.
oh yeah, yeah.
But there's a few trends we want to touch on. I don't want to get into them there, but we
Mhm.
got to touch on a few different things,
Mhm.
before the draft. We do our pre and post like we always do.
No,
So set that up, man.
listen, definitely, man. And I want to, personally, take this time to thank both of you, for joining me. This is the first time I would say in probably close to 30 years that, all three of us have gotten together like this. I know somebody probably, out there is probably like, would we be ready to mock us with the misty eyes, if that was the case. But nonetheless, it's still, great to be on this platform with both of y'all. And at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, it's been a long time, but you don't like we haven't skipped a beat, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It's like we can complete each other's sentences. We know what each other is saying before the other one is saying it. I guarantee you right now that if you got the Showtime Lakers back on the court, granted, they might not be moving right now with the same speed that they did 40 years ago, but I guarantee you, Magic knows what Cooper is. Worthy Magic knows what Worthy is, and so forth. And it's one of those. I'm not comparing us to the Showtime Lakers from that aspect, but nonetheless, I'm just saying from the chemistry standpoint. So that's why I thank both of y'all for being here with me on this one.
Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate it, man. D,
Li-
good seeing you. Good chopping it up with you.
Yes, yes, sir. I'm just a phone call away, William. You know that. So
Listen, and as always, Mark, I know you got a lot of stuff going on right now, man. If you want to give some insight to the folks as far as what you've been doing and what's going on, man.
Oh, just trying to get this voiceover thing up and running, man.
Mhm.
Have the website up and running soon. I'm still, tossing and turning between two different names, so I don't want to throw those out there yet. But by the end of the month, website will be up, and you'll hear my voice on, a couple things here and there, commercials, animation, all of that kind of stuff.
Indeed, man, as always, man. Anybody you want to show some love to before we sign off, man?
not right now. We in the off season right now with the football program, just recruiting, get the recruits into school and stuff like that. And that's why I was at Penn State because I got a couple kids that are on the team, so I
Mhm.
wasn't just visiting. So just proud of the kids, man. They keep doing their thing. Lyric Samuels and the other kid I have, Tariq Blanton. I coached them at when I was at Christ the King. And
Mhm.
it was just good to go down there, see them, watch them practice, see how James Franklin does his thing. And it was just good. It was a good, inspiring um thing for me to see that. So, just try and keep the kids focused and let them know that if they put the work in, they can get where they want to go. So
Listen, man, I always make sure to give you your flowers every single time that you come on here, man. So once again, man, super salute to you, man.
always love, my brother. Always love.
And for all of you folks out there, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. It's always appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can always check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports. And y'all know my motto. If you follow me, I'll follow you right back. And that goes the same on IG, the Instagram at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. You follow me, I'm going to follow you back as well. You can also check it out on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365, one of the best sports debating sites going on social media, in my opinion. So, for Mark Jenkins and Dennis Ward, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.